Joining us now is Alex Thompson. He's a national political correspondent for Axios and perhaps one of the best reporters here in the D.C. area. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. So, Alex, you have been really at the forefront. You've been appearing everywhere lately because you've been covering Joe Biden's ins and outs now for several years, perhaps one of the best sourced reporters in that White House. And you have a deeply reported story here, which has really caught a lot of our attention. Let's put this up there on the screen. And this one is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Biden, quote, is dependently engaged, and many of his public events in front of the cameras are held within those hours. Outside of that time range, or while traveling abroad, the other Biden is more likely to emerge, have verbal miscues, and become fatigued. Alex, can you just tell us a little bit more behind the scenes, what you learned, some of the ways that aides and perhaps even the White House resident staff have been kept away from the president? Because those details are pretty shocking to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of the story of the two Bidens. Now, aides have basically, within the White House, have begun adapting around his limitations. And so, for one, and part of the reason why this was such a shock to so many White House staffers, the debate performance on Thursday, is because they didn't really see him with great frequency. Biden's inner circle that he sees on a day-to-day basis in close quarters is really only about 20 people. Now, of course, people come in and out, which is why, and sometimes they would see a verbal gaffe here or there. One person recounted that, Biden had was talking about calling the mother of a congresswoman, and then the aide had to remind them that he had actually already called them a few weeks ago. But those are sort of brain farts that could be dismissed as one-offs. But because the circle was so small, they didn't really realize the significance of how much he had slipped. And so there's really a lot of both, there's sadness about what this could mean for the election, for potentially Donald Trump coming back to the White House. There's also anger and feeling that the top of the White House had gaslit not just reporters, not just Democrats, not just donors, but even people on their own staff. And one example of this, you just mentioned it, was the resident staff. So I feel this is emblematic of how closely held, and sort of protected by this inner circle that Biden was. Now, the resident staff is, in every White House, basically just takes care of everything. They make the bed, they change the clothes, do laundry, et cetera. They're sort of everywhere. But within this Biden White House, the resident staff has been kept very much at arm's length. They are sent home early at times. There is a deep division within them, and really the resident staff is sort of either controlled by or kept at distance by the First Lady's office. In particular, one aide in particular, Jill Biden's longtime top aide, Anthony Bernal.
Wow. Alex, one of the things that really caught my attention is because you've been reporting on this for so long, you've actually had the courage to write about some of these moments where Biden does not appear all of himself behind the scenes. Can you talk to us what it's been like over the last several years to have the White House push back on any story that you may write about Biden's age and his limitations?
I mean, it's not been fun. I mean, no one likes to get in a fight with the White House. And, at times I felt a little bit out there on a limb, even though I felt very confident in the reporting. I think it's just natural. You look around and see, well, other people aren't writing it as much as well. And, part of that is because the White House comms team, I think, has been very effective at being able to push back on these stories by inserting sort of, well, Trump did, crazy things with his schedule too, and watched TV all the time, didn't seem as energetic, which is fine. I mean, I think those are fair details to point out about Donald Trump and his limitations too at his age. But the thing that I always thought about is that, when he started declaring for re-election, I thought of the age issue not as whether or not it was going to hurt him or help him in November, but let's look at how this will hurt or help him in 2029 when he will still be president. And I have always just said, and I think I said it yesterday, there is more to being president than not being Donald Trump. And as you saw the White House take steps to manage him, to manage his limitations, I just thought it was really important to point it out, given that he was asking for 4 more years.
And Alex, what has it also been like behind? So I covered Donald Trump. He was arguably one of the most accessible presidents. We were always at the rope line. We could ask him whatever we wanted. Pretty much anybody who really wanted one and worked the system could get into the Oval for a multi 45-minute, 1 hour long interview. As somebody who has been covering him so up close, what has it been like to basically been stonewalled and to be kept away from the president like this?
The press has had less access, and when you're talking about sort of sustained, lengthy interview style, sort of question and answering. This White House has limited press access to the president more than any president in several decades. I'll give you just like a few examples here. This president has never done a sit down with the New York Times, with the Washington Post, with the Wall Street Journal, even with Reuters, let alone places like Axios or Politico. He very rarely does sustain sit-down interviews. That has changed just a little bit in the last month or two. You saw him sit down with ABC. Yep. You saw him sit down with Time Magazine. But those are the exceptions to the rule. You even saw them, obviously, just a few months ago, turn down the Super Bowl interview, which really struck so many as odd, especially with the race so close. You would think you'd want to reach tens of millions of people to make your case, but they turned it down. So it really has been just in the background, this extraordinary closing off of the president, which also made it harder to report on his age.
And Alex, just in general, because you know this man, you've watched and reported on all the people around him, there's been so much discussion about him getting out of the race. And of course, Obama is going to be influential, Bill Clinton. But there's been a lot of reporting now about this weekend meeting that happened at Camp David with Biden's family. How do you see the dynamics here at play in keeping him in the race and the people who Biden actually listens to? What are they thinking and saying to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, the people that he's closest to are telling him he should stay in, keep fighting. That he's been counted out before, and he's gotten back up, and he's defied the odds. And those people are his family and those very, very close aides, very near him. The Biden political operation has always been a family affair. Going back to 1972 when his sister ran every single campaign until this last one. His most influential advisors are always going to be his family, and they want him to stay in. So it's going to be really interesting to see once we get really fresh polling. We've only seen like one CBS poll that showed people are more concerned about the age now. The July 4th weekend will make it a little bit more difficult. So we may not have a lot of good polls until sometime next week. And the polling is going to perhaps determine donor freak out. And the other thing that's at least I'm chasing and other people are chasing is really digging in about, well, Thursday night was probably not the first time he's acted this way, right? So trying to really go behind the scenes of the White House and see if there are more details that we have not yet uncovered.
Yes, I'm sure they are. My last question for you, Alex, is the emerging kind of cope from my at least view is by Jim Clyburn and others is preparation overload. They're blaming Biden aides. First of all, how do those aides feel about that? And then second, what changes do you expect the campaign to make internally or perhaps to the White House staff for preparation the next debate around if he does commit to that?
Interesting. Well, I think and I think some of the staffers anonymously talked to the Washington Post yesterday, which, I think they felt that the debate prep actually went well. I can tell you that they were telling people before the debate that they were feeling pretty optimistic. They were feeling pretty loose. They felt, it wasn't that he was knocking out of the park, but he was hitting singles and doubles, and he was fine. They thought it would just basically, in some ways, maybe even just be a draw. The Biden that showed up really surprised a lot of the people that were at debate prep. Now, it's very possible that they miscalculated by having, stuffing him with facts, and they should have just let him rest, that the debate was more about vitality than actually what he said, which is sort of what happened at the State of the Union. But also, it's easier to blame the staff when ultimately there was only one person on that stage, and it was Joe Biden. We really appreciate your insight here, Alex. You're welcome back on the show anytime, and we'll see you later. Thanks, man. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.